So in today's Teaching with TCI session, we are going to go through the process for using TCI in conjunction with Google Classroom. And I'm just going to walk you through this step-by-step process, starting by linking your own TCI account to your own Google account. And then we'll see how to link it to your Google Classrooms and then how to also match the students. So we will walk through this step by step. You will see here the dashboard that shows up when you log into TCI via Clever. And I'm going to start here with the global issues and click on the Teach Now icon. I can go into any of my classes to do this because where I'm going to start is over here in the Settings tab. Now, some things are set in the settings and you won't be able to change your username. For example, all of this is managed via Clever, but there are things that I can change here in the settings. I can determine what student features I want students to have. I can set my default grades. I can change what students can access ahead of time, that is prior to assigning, whether I want students to be able to access any of the lessons, the textbook readings prior to it being assigned. I can also go to opt-in features and you'll see the new dashboard is what I'm using. You can turn that on or off. And then important for today's discussion is I need to go to the integration so that I can link my TCI account to my Google account. So that's going to be just a click of a button here to connect to Google. And it is going to ask me to just give TCI permission to access Google, which is safe to do. So when I do that, just in a matter of a few seconds, because I was already logged into Google, that is now connected. So the two accounts are now connected, and that's the first step in the process. So I've connected myself from TCI to Google Classroom. Now I need to begin connecting my classes. So over here, I'm going to go to my classes. Again, I'm only in global issues here right now, and I just have one period of global issues. If I have multiple periods of global issues, they will all show up under the same program screen. If I have multiple different courses, I will need to go into each program from that home page in order to link the classes. I don't need to do that for my settings. I've already linked myself as a teacher, but in each of the classes, I will need to go in to the TCI programs to do this. So over here on the right under Actions, now we're going to connect this Period 1 Global Issues class to Google Classroom. And you will see I get a list of all of the Google Classrooms that I teach. One thing you will notice here, I have put this first, I've called it Period 1 Global Issues X. If you have a really long class title, it may get cut off. And so you may not be able to tell from there which one is your period 1 class if you have multiple sections. So that's just something you may want to adjust in Google Classroom first, is putting the period 1 somewhere towards the beginning. You do have quite a few characters there, but you may want to put it somewhere close to the beginning so that if you have multiple sections, you're making sure that you are aligning your TCI period 1 to your Google Classroom period 1. Clicking on that, and then I'm connecting. And now it tells me that I have successfully connected these. So that's the second step in the process, and I'll need to repeat that for each class. But the third step here is now it says I have 0 of 1 students connected to Google Classroom. So this is an important step. I need to match up the students in TCI with the students in Google Classroom. The reason I need to do this is so that the grades will populate on both sides. Otherwise, they would all be able to see the links in Google Classroom, but when I grade, it won't pass back to Google Classroom. So let's go in here again to Actions. And now that I've already connected, if I made a mistake, I could disconnect this from Google Classroom and start again. As long as I have this correct, I can go to Manage Students on Google Classroom. And now you see this screen, and it tells me there's a few different options. One is that I can try to auto match the students, and that should match it up based on their username, or I can just do this manually. Or I can also, if I'm in class, I can just ask the students to sign into their TCI account the same way. They go to the settings and they connect to their own Google account that way, the same way I did it as a teacher. So I'm just going to go in for the purposes of today. I just have one student called test account, and I'm going to go in and make sure that test account in Google Classroom matches test account in TCI. The student should be there. If for some reason, I know I've seen a few instances where in very large classes, some of the students didn't show up for some reason. Again, that's why you have that backup plan where the student can also just go into their TCI account and connect themselves to Google. So now this tells me that I'm going to be matching those students. And now whatever happens with this student in TCI is also going to populate into Google Classroom. That means not only will the assignments be in both places, but the grades will be in both places. And this tells me I have one of one student connected. So now I'm going to go ahead and start an assignment so that you can see what that looks like. Go over here to assignments and create new. And I'm just going to pick lesson 4 at random. And I want to assign the text and notebook, but maybe I only want to assign section 1 and section 2. Over here, I need to tell which classes I want to assign it to. Again, this will be limited to whatever sections of global issues I have. In this case, I only have one. I need to give it a due date. It's optional if I want to give this a unique assignment name. Maybe you use a numbering sequence in Google Classroom, so you want to add this to your numbering sequence. If not, it will simply show up with the default lesson name. It will say TCI in brackets at the beginning, and it will show up with the same lesson name that's here on the TCI side. So I'm just going to go ahead and assign that now. And you can see this has assigned these two sections, textbook and notebook. And it also tells me here that it's checkmarked, meaning this populated over into Google Classroom as well. So let's see if that worked. Over here in Google Classroom, I'm signed in. And I go to classwork and I can see there's the assignment that I created. And you'll notice that it has two links, a link to each section of that textbook. And it takes me right there. Oh yeah, and students will still be able to click ahead in the TCI platform the same way they always can, but this just helps me to get a direct link to those sections. And I'll show you in a few minutes what this looks like on a student side as well. But now I see I have the assignment here and it populates just like a regular assignment would if I posted it in Google Classroom. So if I'm giving some assignments in TCI and some assignments in Google Classroom, this gives me one stream to be able to see all of it. And more importantly, it gives students one stream to be able to see everything. It's still going to push them over into TCI to do the actual assignment. But when you grade on the TCI side, it's going to show up here on the Google Classroom side as well. You can see right now the student has 0 out of 5 and it says not turned in. Now, whether or not they actually turn in anything in Google Classroom, you're still going to be able to grade it on the TCI side and a grade will show up here. Now, let's say I actually wanted to add something to this assignment that's outside of TCI. On the Google Classroom side, I could simply go to edit. I could add in anything I want here. I could add in a link to an additional resource. I could add in a Google drawing that maybe is a graphic organizer that I want students to do with this assignment. And so that would give something for students to actually turn in on the Google Classroom side as well. That's completely up to you how you do that. If you want to create that as a separate assignment on Google Classroom, you can do that as well. But this is just another advantage of why it might make sense for you to go ahead and link these two and have the assignments populating on both the TCI side and the Google Classroom side. Now, any change I make here within Google Classroom, it's not going to push back to the TCI side. TCI is only going to maintain its own assignments. But if I'm using this, then that gives me the advantage here of being able to edit and add to and sort things. Again, if I have topics, maybe unit titles in here, I can adjust that on the TCI side, and this will make it seamless if you're using Google Classroom for other kinds of assignments. Okay, let's go back now and into TCI and let's look at what this looks like from a grading standpoint. So I've now given this assignment, the impact of globalization. I'm going to go into grades. And you notice I have another demo here, but this one was lesson 4. And you'll see the student hasn't turned anything in, but that's okay. I can still go in and I can give it a grade. That was actually participation there. Let me go in and make sure that the lesson notebook is actually graded. That's what's going to populate in the assignment. And so you can see I just put 5 out of 5 and that actually auto-saved for me. So now the student has 5 out of 5 for this assignment. Let me go back in to Google Classroom. And I hit refresh there. You can see now it's graded in 5 out of 5. I didn't do anything to grade on the Google Classroom side. I only graded it on the TCI side, but the grade populated back over. That's why it's important to make sure all those students are matched up. Again, they might be able to get the assignment links from here, but it won't match up their grades unless you've matched the students up to in between TCI and Google Classroom. So even though it says not turned in because there was really nothing in this instance for the student to turn in on Google Classroom, that doesn't matter. I've graded it anyway. And now, again, if you had made an adjustment here and you had added something for the students to complete in Google Classroom itself, then the student could go in and turn that in as well. But in this instance, I didn't have anything for them to turn in, but that doesn't really make a difference as far as grading goes. Okay, so that's what it looks like from the teacher perspective and seeing that on the teacher side and how all of that works. Now, let me go back in and show you what this is going to look like from a student side. So if you remember my student, whose name was test account, right? I have test account already logged in here into Global Issues, and it tells me my stream has been updated. So that's something important has happened here. And that is, I've been given a new assignment, okay? So you see the impact of globalization assignment. This is what it looks like from the student lens, very similar to what I saw from the teacher side. And you will see the links here again. Now, what happens when I click on that link? Uh-oh, now we're on the TCI homepage, right? Well, how do I get into that assignment then? One approach is I could be logged in through Clever. If I do that, I have to make sure that the student has logged in to Clever itself and opened the TCI app within Clever. So it's not sufficient there just to log into Clever. They actually have to open the TCI app. So let's say they've already done that in class for something you're going over in class. So they're already logged into TCI via Clever that way. They wouldn't need to log in again here. They would already be there. However, because I have now linked this student to Google, there's a way around that now. I don't have to send the student back into Clever. I have a button here at the bottom that says sign in with Google. And when I sign in with Google, now here I am back on the TCI side. I just used those links. So it's just one extra click rather than going back into Clever and going back into TCI. So the student actually has access to their TCI account now in 2 ways. And that's because I have linked this student, or the student may have linked themselves to Google. And when I go in here, I'm still in the test account, student account and integrations, and you will see the students connected to Google. I've done that on my teacher side. Okay? The student can also do that themselves. But you'll notice that now everything is integrated. So if I'm getting assignments in here, I will be able to access those assignments via the links in Google Classroom. So that's what it looks like from the student side. Let me go back to the teacher side again. just a few other things I want to show you in here. Let's say that I want students to read a particular text selection from the textbook, but I'm not necessarily assigning it as a graded assignment with the notebook. Maybe what I want them to do is have this particular textbook for a reference point. Maybe I'm going to assign an open book assessment from TCI. So I just want them to have this book as a reference, but I'm not really making it a graded assignment. So I'm just going to go into any particular section here. I'm going to do share, and you'll notice here it has a shareable link, or I can share to Google Classroom, and I can determine how I want to share that. And maybe in this instance, I just want to create material. So I'm going to say read this, and it's going to do something very similar here. Go ahead and open that up, but now it's just posted material. So this is not an assignment. So I can have students go in, and maybe I just want this as a reference for some particular additional assignment that's outside of TCI. Or again, maybe what I'm going to do is have students read this, and then I'm actually going to have a TCI assessment posted as an assignment. So you can go into assessments in TCI. You can create those from the question bank or the existing tests, and you can populate that as an assessment. And maybe you want this to be open book, and so you've included the link to the textbook there for them to use. There's just many different ways and approaches you can do this, so I'm just showing you how that can work for you in a kind of a different way. So that, in a nutshell, is how TCI works with Google Classroom.